Visions of the Black Heaven, written by Daniel Zien, read by Daniel Zien. Chapter 31. Driving into the office, Trooper Williams reminded himself that he never wanted to take his job home with him. Yet the past few days' events bothered him so much that he thought about it all night long. He saw his grandmother's eyes warning him of the Sky People, Charlie's dream or nightmare he could never remember. He sat at his desk before ending of his shift. He got a call from the friends of the college professor. She was still missing, and they were very concerned. His deep voice gives the caller a reassuring confidence the professor will be found. Okay, I'll look around and see what I can find. Then he hung up the phone. Starting the appropriate paperwork to end his shift, he had an idea worth checking out before going home. Leaving the office, driving to an area where he thinks the professor might be, the area where the crazy old mountain man's cabin was supposed to be. He knew a lot of people knew about where the cabin was, but no one knew exactly where the cabin was. This is an area where reports of strange things had happened all his life, and this week was no exception. More activity had happened this week than usual. He had several calls. One spotted a UFO. Another reported of a strange, faceless man walking in the middle of the road. When he got there, he saw nothing. Several major car accidents on and off the interstate happened where all the victims said the same thing. Strange, faceless figures just jumped in front of them, and no one could give an adequate description of the offenders. Only that they all wore black clothes and no one could see their face or faces. Or they were faceless. Thinking about something else, Williams instinctively slowed down. His turn signal blinked right as he exited off the interstate to Highway 37 North, to an unmarked road the locals knew as the Haight Highway. An abandoned limestone bluff just lay over the hill. The miners refused to work the mine. They said too many unexplained coincidences happened. Equipment started to move and drive off all by itself, only stopped when it crashed. Two-way radios seldom worked. Explosives blew up without being detonated, or did not explode when they were supposed to. The company didn't want anyone hurt, so the mine was shut down. Traveling a few more miles, turning onto the hidden gravel two-lane road, then at the bottom of a valley, he turned down the next gravel road. Looking at his GPS, it shows him driving in the middle of nowhere. Cresting a hill, he found a car parked on the side of the secluded road. It was destroyed. Looking at his notes, the car was the right make and model and color and year as the missing woman's car. He radioed the license plate number to dispatch to run the plate for identification. Dispatch was barely able to receive his call. Dispatch answered in a scratchy reception that the plate was the professor's vehicle. Getting out, he made notes of all the damage. All windows, headlights, taillights were broken out. It looked like several people had jumped on the hood, roof, and trunk. The interior had been slashed and ransacked. The radio was gone. Glove compartment open. The vehicle registration rested on the floorboard. He knew the damage was caused by kids. No one who was old enough or intelligent enough to use a computer would leave important information like this in the car. It was too easy to commit identity theft today. He had a good idea who caused the damage. What he did not know was when the damage occurred. He saw several foot tracks and what looked like wore-out soles around the car. He assumed that they were wore-out work boots, the kind of boots that the Schroeder kids wore. He shut his cruiser off and radioed into dispatch he was leaving his car to investigate a missing persons case. 10-4, dispatch responded in a scratchy answer. Locking the cruiser, he walked, following the tiny tennis shoe tracks into the forest. The tracks stopped at the base of a tree about 200 yards west inside the forest. Looking around, he found 3 other sets of medium-sized prints of wore-out work boots, about 30 feet from the same tree. in another direction, he saw a single set of larger footprints, which looked like military boot tracks on the opposite side of the same tree. Bending down, touching the edge of the track, he estimated the print to be less than 24 hours old. A few feet away was a distorted group of tracks, which looked like a skirmish. 2 of the 3 smaller boot tracks appeared to be fleeing. A single set of tracks left in another direction from the middle of a patch of thorn bushes. The military boots and tennis shoe tracks were leading in the opposite direction and stopped at a set of wide tire tracks. Williams stood looking at the tire tracks, thinking, the only vehicle with tracks that wide I know of is a military vehicle, like the one I saw in town from that guy that they called Thor yesterday. He was upset with himself that he did not get all their identifications when they were in town. Following the tire tracks, he walked deeper into the forest, where the tire tracks met with another vehicle, then stopped. He saw 4 sets of footprints, the tennis shoe and the military boots. Then he saw another set of military-style boots and another set of smaller tennis shoe tracks. The footprints indicated that the 2 couples had met, talked, and then returned to their vehicles and drove off again. He followed the tire tracks until the tracks just disappeared. Scratching his head, thinking, vehicles just do not vanish like that. Where could it have gone? The ground had not changed. The tracks should have been here somewhere. He took a deep breath to think for a minute. There was something in the air which he had never smelled before. It smelled like a horrible stench of moist, rotten vegetation or rotten meat somewhere. Then he heard strange voices in the distance. Old Man Schroeder, Woodard, and 2 other men he had never seen before were watching something in the forest which he could not see. Williams felt his Indian heritage returning as he moved to get a closer view of what was happening. His grandmother's words warning were echoing through his mind. The sky people are coming! The sky people are coming! Seeing 2 groups of people, a group of 4 men watching the other group of 2 men and 2 women in the forest. He held his position, not sure who were friend or foe. He reached for his radio, turned the volume into his earpiece up. He heard static. He keyed the mic, called for backup, only to hear more static with no answer. He froze as he saw the 4 dark figures appear with the 4 other men. The 4 figures seemed to be wearing totally black. He could not even make out their faces. The stench was terrible. He almost choked on the putrid aroma. The 4 men, 2 of which were Woodard, Schroeder, and Old Man Schroeder, were talking, almost shouting at each other. He had never seen the other 2 men before. They were shouting at each other as well. He froze as 2 of the dark figures looked his way. Crouching deeper into the bush, he knew the element of surprise was his only advantage. The figures talked for a few minutes, then the talk became a muffled shouting. Everyone started walking in different directions. The 4 black figures wandered off into the forest and vanished. The other 4 men walked 2 by 2 in different directions, a few hundred yards away. I hope they don't see the cruiser, Williams thought to himself. After the others had left, he stood up, looking around. The forest was thick. He saw things which he could not explain. Leaning up against a strange stone pillar, he remembered his grandfather saying something about the hollow magic rocks. He was young and did not pay attention. Now he wished he would have. He needed to remember what his grandfather had said. He tried to remember what he was told. Something about the energy of life flows through the magic hollow rock. His steps were strong, swift, silent, as the warrior in him returned. Lifting his head, closed his eyes, he remembered a tactic his grandfather taught him, a tactic allowing all his senses to work. Something was close, something dark, evil, and cold. Opening his eyes, he lost the vision as his sight returned. Feeling a sense of urgency, he weaved his way toward the different colored lights in the distance of trees. Not sure what or where he was walking toward, he kept moving at a cautious pace. The lights revealed a cabin with stained glass windows. He never knew about this cabin. He grew up, lived in, and worked in these woods all his life. Knew everyone in the community. He'd never seen this cabin, or even heard of this cabin before. As far as he knew, these woods were abandoned. Wondering what was going on, the 4 people he just saw before vanished out of sight. He was assumed that they went back into this strange cabin. He mumbled to himself, "Well, I'm here. I might as well make the best of it. After all, I might not find this place again." He walked past another stone pillar. It looked to be an unnatural stone pillar, through a thick grove of strange-looking trees. Tall tree stumps stood at his right side, just inside the stone pillar. The cabin looked like it was there, and then it looked like it was not there. He could see through it, but could not see through it. Really did not know how to explain this. Being schooled in how to communicate effectively, he wondered how was he going to explain this to anyone who had not seen it for themselves. He walked closer to get a better view. Once again he saw the cabin, but didn't see the cabin. He remembered the image projected on a mist of water. The mist went away. The image vanished. The mist returned. The image returned. The cabin looked more real the closer he got to the front door. He stood in the front of the cabin admiring the craftsmanship of unique-looking mosaic patio stones, fitted so perfectly together it seemed they were one piece of solid rock. The front door was large. He had never seen a single piece of wood like this before. The lines of grain were very dark, but the heart of the rings were lighter than he had ever seen. Instinctively, he felt a tingling in his shoulders. He felt danger. Something was close. Something evil was watching him and closing in on him. The hair in the back of his neck stiffened. A stench of rotting flesh filled the air as he was about to knock on the door.